when it is time for us to do so, and to listen patiently and receptively when it is time to listen. May they and we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and by the spirit of love. This we humbly ask in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, all that we hold good and right and true. Amen.
Jailer Allen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Knight, and thank you, Jailer Allen, for leading us in the pledge and also for your service. That takes us to reordering of and additions to the agenda. Does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, that takes us to student reports, which this evening we have none, and then that takes us to public comment. Tonight, if you wish to request to speak, I invite you to select the raise hand icon in Zoom before the close of public comment period. You will then be called on when your term is up to speak. Tonight, you have the opportunity to address the City Council, to speak once on both topics on and off of the agenda. And we have 30 minutes for public comment. Do we have any public comments at this time?
We've received 3 at this point. I would like to invite Josina.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We could hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Davis, City Council, City staff. My name is Joe Stina, President and CEO of the Glendora Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Well, the Chamber continues to do what we have to do to help who we should be helping, our Glendora businesses. You know, we're working hard to try to get things back up and running here. And also I look forward to continuing the discussion with council and city staff on additional resources for our businesses that still need it. I'd like to share a couple of events that are currently going on and one coming up. One is, hopefully you've seen that this week is Cuisines of the Foothills Restaurant Week, the Road to Oz. This year's event is a journey down the yellow brick road to all the sights, sounds, and tastes of our local eateries. Restaurant Week started yesterday, and goes through May 30th, and it includes specials, promotions, discounts, movie character visits, and much more at participating restaurants in Glendora and the surrounding area. There's also a chance for restaurant patrons to win prizes by simply turning in receipts or showing us receipts via the Cuisines website or the Chamber office. There's also a chance to win Cuisines t-shirts. First time we've had a t-shirt for the event, and much more. So if you want to get more information, please visit cuisinesofthefoothills.com or contact Michelle at our office. Also, I am very excited to announce that we are going to have a live and in-person 2021 installation and awards dinner presentation at the Glendora Country Club on June 23rd at 6 p.m. Now, it may look a little different. We'll have all the necessary COVID recommendations, distancing, etc., but we will be back together live and in person. Pre-registration for this event is a must and required, and there's other requirements too. So you can visit the chamber calendar to get that, or glendora-chamber.org/installation. So at this event, we'll have our State of the Chamber, our business awards, Business of the Year, New Member of the Year, Nonprofit and Ambassador of the Year. We'll also be thanking our outgoing board of directors, and we'll be welcoming and installing our incoming 2021-22 board of directors, in which we have 7 new board members coming on our board. So it's exciting, new ideas. We know them, so they're not new faces, but they'll be new to the board. So there's a lot more going on. So if any questions, come by the chamber. The doors are unlocked now. So we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cena.
Now I'd like to invite Jackie's iPhone to speak. If you could just introduce yourself, and then you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name's not Jackie's iPhone. My name is Jackie Aaron, and I'm a longtime resident of Glendora. I was born and raised here. I received my K through 12 education here. I returned to move here to raise my family. I spoke last time about my concerns for public safety and the directive that I believe the city council needs to take in doing a vote of no confidence. I was very disappointed that it was not put on the agenda this time. Since I spoke last, just to give you some background, the city of Arcadia has moved forward with their city council and council members in doing a vote of no confidence. The city of Azusa, the city of Diamond Bar, Manhattan Beach, they have all as a council and as a city has said no to Gascon and yes to protecting its citizens. Glendora needs to do the right thing here and protect its citizens. Just May 12th, a young mother was stabbed in a park nearby. She was rushed to the hospital. It was in front of her children. A transient woman stabbed her and threatened to take away her child. George Gascon is not prosecuting this woman for attempted murder. Instead, she will be treated with assault with a deadly weapon. This is Glendora's future if the city does not act and join in doing a vote of no confidence. This is very serious. I heard the wonderful prayer that was set before this meeting. It said, speak out for when it is time to do so. Stand for justice. And that's what the city council needs to do for its citizens. If we do not do that, we are going to be the only city that is not joining in a vote of no confidence. I urge the city council and its members to do a vote of no confidence and to please not be the only city that is sitting this out for its citizens on public safety. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
At this point, I'd like to invite John Harold to speak.
Good evening. Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you and see you.
Excellent. Again, my name is John Harold, and thank you to Mayor Davis and the City Council for letting me speak tonight. I'm a little disappointed, even more than I was a few weeks ago, because you still haven't done what I think is the right thing. And right before the meeting, I heard that you came out of closed session and you have decided not to do any action in support of the amicus brief that was filed by the Association of Deputy District Attorneys. Again, I am uniquely qualified to speak on this issue because I was the executive vice president of that association. I'm one of the people who helped create that organization. And the main purpose of that organization was and is to help and protect victims. And you had another perfect opportunity to do the right thing. The initial judge who saw our briefs supported us. And now Gaston is trying to overturn it by taking it up on appeal. Instead of being on the right side, you guys are not. We've got to have the motion to non-support of Gaston. Every single day, what he is doing is making the citizens of Glendora less safe. I was the filing deputy in both El Monte and West Covina. I was a DA in Pomona, our local courts. I retired as the filing deputy in El Monte. I can tell you daily, bad guys are getting away. Victims are not being protected. And these are our victims. These are our citizens that are not being protected because this council is sitting on its hands and not getting involved. There will be a time the history of this will be written. And unfortunately, it's going to say, instead of pride of the foothills, history is going to say that this council was hiding in the foothills. Public safety is not a game. Public safety is not something that you should do no action on. This council has a duty. Every other council, and I've been involved in local politics here for a lot of years, I believe would have stepped up to the plate. Even mayors that I didn't agree with, I feel confident would have stepped up to the plate. But for some reason, this council and this staff is deciding that when the most important public safety issue of the last 50 years, they've decided that Glendora is going to sit this one out. Get on board and start helping our victims. Stand up for the citizens of Glendora and do something that everyone can do, and you can uniquely do it. You need to make Glendora safe again. I'll be speaking of this issue on more forums. I'll be speaking at this Friday on it, and I'll be actually bringing my television show, Public Comment, with John Harold back so we could discuss this further, because I only have 3 minutes.
Yes,
Thank
thank you, Mr. Harold.
Now I'd like to invite Ashley Rizzotti.
Hi, council. Hi, mayor, staff, and members of the community. It's nice to see you guys. I just wanted to quickly say hello. This is Ashley Rizzotti from Athens Services, your government affairs manager over there. And just say thank you to all the community members that came out to our recent compost giveaway that was held earlier this month. Athens provided over 10 tons of compost. And so we're looking forward to seeing the uses that it's going to in people's gardens at home. COVID's been a great tool for people to get back outside and start doing some landscaping and gardening and composting at home. So we're so excited to have been able to offer that to the community of Glendora. And then also the following weekend, we had a household hazardous waste event where we serviced over 600 residents. So thank you for all those that participated in properly disposing of your household hazardous waste. Again, Athens is just honored to continue to service and provide the needs that you guys need there in the city of Glendora. And I hope to see you guys all in person very, very soon. So thank you so much for the opportunity and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
And now we invite Melody Bennett to speak. They look frozen.
Melody, are you there?
No, there she goes. Melody, are you there?
Perhaps
I think they're frozen.
yes, I think that their service froze. Do we have anyone else that's waiting to speak?
That is it. There are no other public records requests or public records requests to speak.
And have we received any emails with public comments?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, then I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for statements and reports. Councilmember Alawas.
The council member, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. We've received a number of emails over the last week or so about the discussion we've had or has been having on the Alley Parkway. So on the request of the citizens that have sent those emails in to address the Alley Parkways and the lack of clarity and or agreement, I'm requesting a second to place on our next June 8th council agenda a discussion addressing parking in our alleyways and possible city municipal code amendments.
The councilman, if I could ask a piece of clarification there, we had previously announced that we would meet with the community to provide clarification directly from LA County and work with 2 council members. Is your ask to supersede that meeting?
You can still have that meeting. I just like to have it agendized. In reviewing the codes, I found a number of areas in the code which are somewhat conflicting, more so than what we have talked about in the past. And I thought it would be good to have an open meeting discussion on that item. The previous item that we had was on overnight parking. It was not on the parking in the alleyways. And I think that we need to have a greater discussion since we've had, I guess, close to 100 petitions that were signed for this.
Okay,
Not to
Mike,
say not to have that, but to also agendize this.
Michael, I know you're asking for a second, and I do believe additional discussion is warranted. I just think some additional homework needs to be done by staff before we have that discussion. So I would be happy to support that decision at a future time, but just not tonight.
Would it help if I change the date?
For me, no, because I'd like to get more clarification from staff before we have another open discussion about it, because our last discussion, there was some confusion, and I prefer that we make sure that we don't have another meeting with that kind of confusion again.
So if you, I still think that if you gave 2 to 4 weeks for staff to do that, get that information, that would be probably appropriate.
Is there a second for Councilmember Alawas's ask? Okay, there does not appear to be one at this time. Do you have other items you wanted to discuss?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Oh, caught me off guard.
All right.
Well, first off, I would like to make sure everybody knows we've got graduations coming up at the various schools. Graduations are going to be a little different this year, but at least there will be some in-person graduation. So as we're seeing things starting to get back to normal, we're seeing kids back in school, and really excited about the beginning of the next school year. I also would like to give a shout out this evening to a local Whitcomb High School graduate from 2014, Chase Beckham, who recently won American Idol for 2021. So I'm not a big American Idol fan, but I saw the conversations about it, looked him up. Looks like he's got a great career ahead of him. So congratulations, Chase. Make Glendora proud. That's all. Thank you.
I think we should have some entertainment at some future meetings, so maybe we can work that out with them.
We'll reach out.
Thank you. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I'd like to tag along with what Mayor Pro Tem just said and congratulate the students from Charter Oak, Whitcomb, and our own school here. And I really want to congratulate teachers, administrators, everybody that made such a challenging and difficult school year the best year that they could. A round of applause for all of them, and I appreciate the incredible job that each of them did. So thank you to all of them. Goal line continues to move ahead, and I would really encourage everybody who is tuned in to go back and look at the town halls on May the 7th and May the 19th. Those were exceptional times of questions and answers and a lot of facts being shared. I'm amazed that many people don't know about what's going on or the closure of streets. You can go to our own city website. You can go to foothillgoldline.org and get anything just about that you want on what's going on there. And I would encourage each and every one to look at those. Chamber event, Joe did a great job, and I would just affirm what he said. The last thing is, I know that the light on Elwood has not been timed up yet or synced up yet with the amount of cars that are using that street. Adam says that by the end of the week, the county will have done what they need to do to sync that up. So please just know that we're aware of that it's a short light. It needs to be longer, and we're working on that. And so hopefully by the end of the week, that's going to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedenthal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo the congratulations to the schools, the students that are graduating and promoting from lower grades to new schools and big times in their careers. And thank the educators profusely for the tremendous job they've done. We've heard mention of Memorial Day coming this next Monday. In observance of Memorial Day, you are all invited community-wide to stop in at the Paramount Pioneer Cemetery, historical landmark number 5 in Glendora, and take a unguided tour, if you wish, for an informal open house to see the site. Many of us have never seen it before. Some of us have some sweat into it, but welcome you to come take a look and learn a little history about the town. Open house will be 9 to 1 at the cemetery, not Oakdale, but Fairmount Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you. Segueing from that, we are mindful this week of those who have sacrificed even their very lives on our behalf. And that this week also, it is a good time for all of us to be mindful of how we can be better stewards of our freedom and liberties so that everyone experiences it equally and fairly. And tonight, I would like to ask that we adjourn our meeting in memory of Keith Hilliard. Through his employment and through his volunteerism, Keith Hilliard made a lasting impact on the city of Glendora and surrounding communities. After graduating from Redlands University with his bachelor's degree, he eventually got his teaching credentials and eventually his master's degree at USC. He began teaching at Azusa High in 1956 before coming over to the Glendora Unified School District. During his many years at GUSD, he had many accomplishments. He was principal at Goddard Middle School, chaired the Drug-Free Youth Committee, just to name a few of those accomplishments. After 42 years in education, Keith retired but continued working as an energy consultant for the district. Keith served 2 terms as the president of the Rotary Club and was the face of the Rotary's Glendora Cora Festival. He was chairman of the Foothill Presbyterian Hospital Foundation, a member of the Library Foundation Board, received many awards and recognitions, including Glendora Citizen of the Year. He was part of equestrian events, trail events, football booster, band booster, Friday Night Live youth event. The list continues. While his profession was that of an educator, the best lesson that he taught was the lesson that he lived. Keith often joked about and was teased about the fact that he was the guy that followed behind others, specifically equestrians, in parades and other events, that he was the pooper scooper guy. But that very act exemplified the kind of person he was. There was no job too small, too dirty, or too smelly. He selflessly served others with that quiet, steady presence and his dry sense of humor. His family has not yet set a date for a memorial service, but will notify the community once they do. Keith was someone that always put service above self. On behalf of the city of Glendora, we extend our condolences to his family and offer our appreciation for the life and service of Keith Hilliard. Godspeed, Keith. I would like to, at this time, ask the city manager if he has any reports to give.
Yeah, it's just one. At our previous council meeting, we had a conversation, as was spoken, about overnight parking in alleys, and subsequent to that, received several communications and have reached out to the community, and within the next month have offered to set up a meeting, including both Athens and LA County Fire and both city staff, with 2 council members to help clarify any information out there that may have been previously stated as incorrect or previously misunderstood. I'll reach out to Councilman Alice if there are conflicting codes, work with Allison and Jeff and Egan and the chief on any of those that may be out there ahead of time. So we will reach out. Staff will walk those neighborhoods, placing door hangers and leave other information with those the community members to make sure everyone has a time and a place and a link to make sure all parties are invited and willing to take all questions at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winder, Mr. City Attorney, do you have any report to give?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, well, with that, that takes us to special items. Mr. Raymond, COVID-19 reopening the economy update.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So no big presentation tonight. Not a lot of changes from the last time we met 2 weeks ago. We have clarification that June 15th appears to be our day in the state of California as we move forward to a reopening without many of the capacity limitations. We do know that the June 15 date will correspond with OSHA and any business sort of requirements that exist. And we also know that potentially on a large scale, events above 5,000 may have some special requirements as well. So as we know more, we will make sure we pass it along. And just lastly, the American Recovery Act will receive about $7.5 million total funding. It is our understanding that the final guidance rule will be issued in mid-July. We will be a 151-page draft document and look forward to discussing with the City Council potential uses and programs to assist our businesses and community as best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That takes us to our next special item, presentation on Water Awareness Month. Public Works Director Allison Swedes, I believe, will be introducing the item for us.
Madam Mayor and Council, I'd like to introduce who's going to speak is our new Assistant Director, Chisholm Agbagalu, and he has started with us approximately a few weeks ago, and he comes from Metropolitan Water. So Chisholm, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Allison, and good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Council. As mentioned, my name is Chisholm Agbagalu. I serve as the Assistant Public Works Director here in the Water Division. A position I've held now for almost a month. So it's truly an honor and privilege to join this team and be a part of this community here in Glendora. So yes, the month of May is Water Awareness Month, and it's actually very timely, given the severe conditions in which we're currently experiencing. But this really gives us an opportunity to highlight the importance of California's water resources to human health, our economic vitality, and environmental quality. And as we all know, water is essential for the sustainability of our life as we know it. This initiative, or this endeavor, was created as a joint venture between the Department of Water Resources and the Association of California's Water Agencies, or ACWA. It was created as a response to one of the worst droughts in California history. This was back in 1987. This was a 5-year drought that lasted from 1987 to 1992. And really, this was actually, obviously, until the recent drought in 2015, this was seen as the longest drought in California's history. And this initiative was created primarily as a tool to promote water conservation and really just the efficient use of water resources. And the message still remains to today, water conservation, efficient use of water. I would say the biggest change from the early 90s till today is really the mindset in terms of how we perceive water conservation. Back in the 90s, this was sort of, this idea of water conservation was seen as a temporary fix to surmount the existing water or the existing drought conditions. Whereas today, this is actually an integral part of our everyday lives. And we have to keep water conservation in mind in terms of everything we do, how we use water. We are experiencing consistently longer drought conditions. So it's very important that we continue to conserve water. In 2008, we developed our water conservation program here in the Water Division. And in the heat of the drought in 2015, we started to log water usage and monitoring our monthly conservation figures. And we've actually seen a drop or a reduction of about 15 to 25% in water demand. So Glendorians are doing a great job of conserving water. However, there's always room for improvement. In light of Water Awareness Month, I just wanted to highlight some of the ways we as Glendorians can do our parts to continue to conserve water. We have what we know as the water use efficiency surveys. Basically, if you notice a steep increase in your water bills, our team will come out to your home free of charge or to your place of business, and we'll conduct a survey. A lot of times this may be due to irrigation leak of some sort or some plumbing leak, but we'll do a thorough survey and try to rectify the issue. Also, we have several educational workshops for the community groups. We hold Fix a Week several times out of the year here in the Water Yard. And also I've referenced some websites that you can also utilize to figure out what are some of the rebate options that you can take advantage of. And bewaterwise.com is Metropolitan's website to see some of the tips and that you can use or you can apply to be able to utilize your water much more efficiently. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chisholm. Welcome to the city of Glendora, and thanks for that information. I know I've personally benefited from the water use efficiency survey, and it saved me money as well as saving water. So I appreciate that service. Does any of the other council have any questions at this time? Okay. Well, thank you very much for that report. That takes us to public hearings. Our first item, a public hearing to consider a proposal to levy and collect assessments for the fiscal year 2021-2022 for the Glendora Village Business Improvement District. At this time, I would like to declare the public hearing open and invite Housing and Economic Development Manager Valerie Velasquez to report. Valerie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. So as mentioned tonight, we have a public hearing for the assessments to be collected in the Business Improvement District. Next slide, please. So just as a quick reminder, the Business Improvement District is the area in our downtown village. Boundaries are to the north at Bennett, to the east at Vista Bonita, to the south, primarily Foothill Boulevard, with a small extension to include the shopping center across from us, and to the west at Vermont Avenue. Next slide, please. So every year there are multiple steps that are required before City Council can renew the collection of assessments for the upcoming fiscal year. The first official step was taken on March 23rd when the City Council approved the BID's annual plan and adopted a resolution of intent to levy and collect assessments on March 23rd. From there, staff took several steps to make sure that public notice was given, and there were publications made in the paper on several occasions, as well as a mailing sent to all of the BID members through the United States Postal Service. Then on May 11th, we had the first public meeting when council had the opportunity to receive any testimony from any members of the public or any members of the BID. And then tonight we have the second and final public hearing, where again, there is an opportunity for any members of the BID or members of the public to give testimony to City Council. And also tonight would be the night that we would count any protest votes that were received. And in the absence of 50% weighted votes, Council can then adopt a resolution of intent, or I'm sorry, a resolution to levy and collect assessments for the upcoming fiscal year of 21-22. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the budget that is proposed for the upcoming year. It includes the assessments that are the subject of tonight's public hearing, as well as additional revenue from events for a total projected revenue amount of $98,000. And then they have expenditures for the planned activities from marketing, a part that they contribute to the cost that the city does for the landscaping, as well as the different events they have, and miscellaneous costs such as their storage and the outside banners and outside music as well, for a total of $112,750 in expenditures. This year, their expenditures do exceed the revenue by just under $15,000. Next slide. And this is just a quick glimpse at their fund balance. So while their expenditures do exceed this year, you'll see that last year, the actual fund balance finished with a balance of about $98,987. And then this year, based on the revenues that have come in and the expenditures that we foresee, they will finish with a balance of about $101,000. So just covering that shortage that they're proposing, the balance would still be $86,250, which is a pretty healthy amount. Council has recommended that they continue to maintain at least $10,000 in this fund balance. Next slide, please. So tonight is the second and final public meeting. The recommendation is for City Council to open and conduct the public hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed levy and collection of assessments within the village. And in the absence of the 50% protest votes received, Council then go ahead and adopt the resolution approving the levy and collection of assessments for the fiscal year 21-22 for the Glendora Village Business Improvement District. And then before returning it to Council, I will say that no public comment has been received, nor am I aware of any protests that have been received, but City Clerk can confirm that as well. And with that, I will conclude my report.
Thank you, Valerie. At this time, I will ask if there are any members of the public wishing to give testimony at this time.
We've received no requests and there have been no written correspondence received either.
Okay, very good. Well, then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to Council for discussion and deliberation. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate the report, Valerie, and recognizing no dissenting votes. I certainly approve this. I do want to share that I am not alarmed by the tap into reserves for the bid to use for some of their funds, because I also recognize earlier in the year with the COVID emergencies, they offered some leniencies and considerations for dues and other things that were typical fundraisers, in addition to not being able to have the events that they traditionally like to do. So while they are certainly far from destitute in their economies, I think they've given wise consideration. So I have no alarm to that, and appreciate their efforts to keep our village vibrant.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. Valerie, thank you for your report. Is there a consideration to what we did before was to push back when the dues are due to maybe after the first of the year to help them continue to recover? And I know that we have on here the fiscal impact, the shortfalls and everything. Have we thought about using any of the Recovery Act to help some of our businesses in paying their dues? So
to the first question with the concessions or the postponing of some of those fees last year, that was done at the request or comments that we had received from some of the members of the BID. This year we did not, so it was not something that we considered since it was not a request made from anyone and we did not hear. Regarding the American Recovery Program, I know Adam's saying he'll raise his hand and respond to that. Go ahead, Adam, please.
Thank you, Valerie. I would just add that the American Recovery Act specifically exempts cities from paying for taxes that are waived. It's one of the specific exemptions.
Is this a tax or a fee?
If cities waive costs, or taxes, they can't be made up. It's one of the it's that and pension. So in this specific case, we would be unable to do that. And then again, the rule making for that funding is not finalized till mid-July. Good idea,
Okay.
though.
So is there, so would it take a motion from council to give them a 6-month reprieve before they would have to pay that, even though they didn't ask for it?
I believe council can do that if that's the direction you want to take. We did that last year. We made a small edit to the resolution and worked with HDL to let them know and make that available. So if that's something council wanted to do, although it was not requested. If I'm wrong, someone correct me, but I believe that you can do that.
I'll let everyone else speak first, then we can circle back around that if there's an appetite on council to do so. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Councilmember Thompson?
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I would echo what David said. I support this, and I believe that the bid board supported this. And I think that we should move on this as shown. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
Just looking forward to the bid getting back to work, or I shouldn't say getting back to work. They've been working through this whole thing, but for us to get back in person and some of the events down in the village and some of the amazing things the business owners down there are able to do. So we're really excited about all of that. Valerie, I do want to ask a question though. If we have individual requests of hardships, we have the ability or the authority to deal with each one of those individually. I don't know if that would be a question for you or for Adam.
Adam, I'll let you answer that. I know in the past we have worked with them, but I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a specific allowance to forego payment, but definitely the city's always worked with people, and still under the local emergency, we would still have the authority in which to do so.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Because, some businesses have survived the pandemic fine. Some have struggled a little, some have struggled a lot. And if that need is there, I'm sure that staff will work with any business owner. So thank you. But I support this. This is great.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, then I will request a motion.
I would move that we support this as shown. Mendel?
Second, Gary?
Okay, I have a motion to adopt a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Glendora, California, approving the levy and collection of assessments for the fiscal year 2021-2022 for the Glendora Village Business Improvement District as permitted by the Parking and Business Improvement Area Law of 1989, California Streets and Highway Code, Section 36500. The motion was made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Alowis,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us to our next public hearing, a public hearing to approve the City of Glendora Annual Action Plan fiscal year 2021 to 2022 for the Community Development Block Grant, also known as the Cdbg program. At this time, I will declare the public hearing open and once again invite Valerie Velasquez to report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see, do we have my PowerPoint for that one?
No, it doesn't look like we have the PowerPoint or the item listed for item 6.
Okay, all right.
Apologize, Valerie.
Okay, so let me, okay, that's fine. So basically the CDBG grant will just kind of give you a quick well, let me pull it up on mine so I can have myself structured in what I need to let you guys know. Sorry about that.
Would you like to share your screen?
Oh, sure, let's do that.
Okay, I'm to stop sharing so you can share yours. Whenever you're ready.
Sorry, guys, I have not shared a screen before.
There she goes.
Does that work?
Yep.
I don't see where you guys are now. Now I lost you.
That's okay. Your screen is up. Just go
No,
ahead.
see, this is another grant that I was reviewing. So let's not do this because, can you take it away, Kathleen? Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, if you hit stop share at the bottom of your screen, Valerie.
Let's see.
Yes, I got it.
You got it?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's just run through this. So today, let's remember with the Cdbg grant, we need to go ahead and meet 3 primary national objectives. We need to benefit low to moderate income persons, eliminate slum and blight, and we need to meet an urgent need. Every year, we need to submit an application to HUD that goes ahead and shows how we are going to use these funds. We went ahead and received our number or allocation from HUD earlier this year. We were originally told it was going to be $310,000. In addition to that, we had an unspent allocation from previous years. But then on May 13th, we received notice of an updated allocation, not by very much, by about $4,000. So in total for this year, we are going to have just over $500,000. Primarily, we will be using those funds to do a infrastructure project, and that is done within a low to moderate income area. The amount of that project will be $442,000. So it is the majority of the annual amount we will have to work with. In addition, we will place $15,000 towards fair housing, and the additional amount of $47,000 will go towards administration for our consultant and staff time in the administration, and making sure that we are doing our reporting requirements in compliance with this grant. The street project is in the area between Glendora Avenue and Grand Avenue, just north of Arrow Highway. It is pretty much that whole block there. There are 9 streets that will be included. It will be repaving of the deteriorating pavement, as well as improvements to the sidewalks and ramps to make sure that there is a nice, safe, accessible pathway. I'm also talking with Public Works. This project is a big one. Again, there's 9 streets, so it will likely carry over into the following fiscal year as well. And we may see it return for additional funding in the next fiscal year. Cdbg does require that we have some public participation. So these projects that we are proposing did include an application period and published notice that was sent out to the public. We received the notice, like I said, from the Housing Rights Center, as well as our Public Works Department. We have had the draft plan on our website for the minimum 30-day required period. Well, more than that, actually. It's been up from April 14th through May 24th on our website. And so tonight is the second public hearing. The first one was on April 13th. And tonight we will go ahead and ask council. The recommendation is to approve the 1-year plan for fiscal year 21-22 and authorize the city manager to submit an application for the community development block grant funding to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And with that, I'll turn it back to council for any questions.
Thank you, Valerie. At this time, I will ask if there are any public comments.
At this point, we've received no written correspondence, and there have been no requests to speak by any Zoom participants.
Okay, well then with that, I will close the public hearing and bring you back to council for discussion. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Valerie, thank you for an excellent job. This is what is called going live, and you did an excellent job in being able to share the essence of what this is. I certainly support this and have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Valerie, great job. And I applaud you for continuing to prospect to find these funds for us that we don't miss out. And the best part is it's something we all get to see. So it'll be tangible on the ground successes. So the neighborhood will certainly enjoy it, and the city does overall. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Valerie, for your report. It's a great report. I'm looking forward to it. So is this going to help our PCI rating on our streets?
I'm sure it will. I don't have a numbers of how much, but everything helps, yes.
So with that being said, are we going to coordinate water projects on those streets?
I'm sure Public Works takes a look. I believe they do take a look at that and make sure that that's all coordinated before we start this project.
Councilman, I don't have the 2-year proposed CIP before us, but I can take a look and get back to you offline. But I do believe there are some water projects in this area, and there are some other just normal street repavement as well.
All right, thank you for that. On page 24, the library had decided not to move forward on $6,500 worth of ADA signage. Is there still a need for that signage?
I don't know. They were made aware. I did go ahead and send the notice of funding availability to the library. They did not submit an application this year, but they were notified. So I don't know. I'd have to get back with you or check in with them.
I would add there's in the current year budget, there's $45,000 for signage in and around the civic complex, and the proposed 2-year budget, there will be additional funding for signage, which would include ADA required signage.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have. Great report, Valerie. Thank you. I'm supportive of it.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No questions. Great report, Valerie. Thank you.
All right, with that, then I will request a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Friedendahl. Is there a second?
So I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Olois to approve the annual action plan fiscal year 2021-2022 and authorize the city manager to submit an application to the Cdbg funding to the Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD. I'll conduct an oral roll call. Councilmember Alois,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Thank you, Valerie. That takes us to the consent calendar, items 7 through 11. And before we proceed with that, I will call on Madam City Clerk to give us a clarification on item 10.
Mayor Davis, staff has submitted a revised staff report associated with agenda item number 10, authorizing the purchase of replacement public works and police department vehicles. This report includes a quote received from Glendora Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram following the posting of the agenda, and amends the report to make consistent pricing available, and the following change and requests the following change to the recommendation. For the purchase of the 2021 Dodge Durango from National Auto Fleet Group, NAFG, from $50,779.58 to instead recommending the purchase of one 2021 Dodge Durango from Glendora Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram for $50,668.63, which will change the total requested authorization from $151,445 $151,334.74 to $151,334.74. The actual requested revision to the actions being requested at tonight's council meeting are listed on the slide before you. If you have any questions, Public Works Director Allison Sweet is available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. The items on the consent calendar can be enacted by one motion without individual discussion unless a council member has requested to pull it. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer, are you still wishing to pull item 10 or?
No, with the changes in place, there's no longer a need for that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to pull any items?
I don't have a poll, but I have a short question on item 10.
Okay.
Do we know what the lead time is to take delivery of these vehicles being purchased?
This is Allison. I do not have that answer unless Michael Sled, the Assistant Director in Operations and Maintenance. But it sounds like he may not have that answer either. We can get back to you on that.
Okay, I'm just curious as if the industry is having long lead times on order things, but oftentimes if this is an inventory item, then that's favorable for delivery, of course. So not a critical item. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If there are no further questions or comments, then I will ask for a motion on items 7 through 11.
So moved, Michael.
Second, Mendel.
Okay, David,
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Alowis, a second by Councilmember Thompson. I'll conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Alowis,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. And thank you, Allison. All right, that takes us to member agenda items. Item 12, study session on inclusionary housing. And at this time, I will invite Development Director Jeff Kugel to report. Mr. Kugel.
Thank you, members of the council and Mayor Davis. Back in March, the mayor requested that staff go back and do some research on the subject of inclusionary housing. If you could pull up do we have my PowerPoint, Kathleen, or? All right. The council asked that we do some research on the subject of inclusionary housing, which is a program to broaden the development and provision of housing within the community, and particularly housing that would be targeted and be available for households that are low income. And it's a tool that is typically provided within zoning regulations of a city, to facilitate the development of affordable housing in the community. And so in doing that research, I've sort of divided this presentation up into the areas in this bullet point. One, to give a little background on what is inclusionary and affordable housing and how do they work together. A little bit of information on the state density bonuses and how they work with those programs. Some examples of inclusionary housing programs within the region. I'll touch on some of the legal issues that have come up over the last decade or so. And then lastly, talk a little bit about the impact that I've found some studies on the impact of inclusionary policies on the housing market within an area. Next slide, please. So affordable housing, a quick definition of affordable housing is that it is housing where the monthly or annual costs are not greater than 30% of the household income. That's typically, that is what the state regulations define as housing that is affordable. And affordable housing programs such as inclusionary housing and other programs that facilitate the development of affordable housing are either funded directly or indirectly through city regulatory policies to produce housing that is set aside, that is regulated to be provided to low-income households. Low income is defined by region within the state as a percentage of the area median income. So the next slide, please. So for the region, the Southern California region, or actually the Los Angeles County region, the numbers that have been produced by the state of California this year define the several different categories of moderate to extremely low income households. These are the income limits on the page for a household of 4 people. The numbers change based on the number of people in the household, and they also change by region throughout the state as the cost of housing varies from county to county. So you can see moderate income, which is defined as 120% of the median income for a household of 4, is maximum income is $96,000, down to extremely low, which is 30% of the area median income is $35,450. And you can see if you have any knowledge, understanding of what the market rate housing costs are within the Glendora area and LA County, a household of 4, especially when you get into the lower income categories, it's tough to find a place that that is within 30% of the monthly income or annual income to provide housing. Next slide, please. So what is inclusionary housing? Inclusionary housing is a method to provide affordable housing where a city requires by ordinance a certain percentage of new housing, all new housing constructed within the city, so any market rate project, to provide a certain percentage of their units set aside to affordable income households at some level. Some range between the moderate to extremely low level. So for example, many cities, a common requirement is a 15% inclusionary project. So under that scenario, let's imagine a 40 unit project with a 15% inclusionary requirement, and 6 units would be required under a theoretical ordinance for low or moderate income households. Next slide. Also included within the state law, the cities must follow. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail and repeat some of these ideas here that are in the state law for all inclusionary programs that are adopted. One, inclusionary requirements cannot be confiscatory, in that a developer cannot be deprived a fair and reasonable return on their project, and that an inclusionary ordinance should not be a deterrent to development. And so as part of developing an ordinance these days, all cities, and in my research there's a whole list of references and resources that I found in my research on the subject. One of those is a feasibility study that was conducted in 2019 by the city of Long Beach that analyzed the housing market, what it costs to buy land, to construct, and what they can sell or rent units for. And they determine the feasibility of an inclusionary requirement within their code. And that's one example. Next slide, please. So the state law requires that you provide different ways or alternatives under an inclusionary ordinance to meet that requirement. And if you can, under the most common option, or one of the options at least, you can require each developer to build the inclusionary units within their project. You can require them to pay an in lieu fee, meaning that you're not building the units within your project. However, you have to provide the city a fee that we would collect, and then my understanding is take that money and then go develop or help finance affordable housing somewhere else in the city. Could be land dedication, either within a project or somewhere else nearby the project. I've seen some programs that allow carving out a portion of the project as a separate parcel for an affordable component as part of an inclusionary requirement. Or you can buy and fund the preservation and rehabilitation of existing affordable units within the community. Next slide. California, now let's talk a little bit about density bonuses. Many programs that require inclusionary units or inclusionary in lieu fee, whenever you're building inclusionary units, they're able to do so. Obviously, if you're building inclusionary units, that means you're setting aside a certain number of units that can't be sold for market rate. So somewhere you're affecting the economics of a project. If a developer has to pay assumingly the same amount for land and the construction costs are the same, if the city's imposing a regulation where you can't charge as much, the developer can't either sell the units for as much money or rent them for market rate because they're being set aside for lower income households. So in examples where this occurs, where an inclusionary units are built within a project, many developments will take advantage of state density bonuses, where because you're providing these low income units in state law, and it's part of the city's code, that you can increase the density of the project by a factor that's related to the number of units that you provide within the project. So the range of density bonuses here that I provided for the low income category, and in the law it's between the low and very low income category, but for the low income categories, if you provide 10% of the units to low income, you get a 20% in your increase in your density bonus. And if you, at the highest end, if you provide a 25% of the units to low income, you get a 50% bump in the density that's allowed within a project. So for example, if you have 40 units, you'd get 44 units under the 10% or the 20% density bonus, or actually 48 units, sorry, as that would give you that level of a bump. Next slide, please. In addition to bonuses, the state law also allows concessions to development standards if you provide lower income housing. So if you're requiring inclusionary housing, it's likely you're also going to be doing some accommodation on density bonuses and concessions on development standards. So the city would have to, under the state law, relax if they provided affordable housing or low income housing as part of a project, may have to increase building height, reduce setbacks, reduce parking. Those are the most common things that cities have to modify for projects that are receiving density bonuses under the state law, or if a developer requests them because of an inclusionary requirement. Next slide, please. In April of 2020, let me get a sip of water real quick. The San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments did a survey of cities within their organization, and there are 31 cities in the San Gabriel Valley, of which cities have an inclusionary program. And there were 3 cities under that survey that indicated that they had a inclusionary program or an ordinance within their code: Pasadena, Duarte, and Claremont. I put an asterisk by Pomona because Pomona, I didn't discover this until after I wrote the report, but only in May of this year, just recently adopted an inclusionary program. So I wanted to make sure I got that city in there as well. Next slide. In all of these cases that I looked at, the summary of the programs, they apply to all new for sale or rent residential projects above a certain number of units. So in most of these cities, looks like it was about 4 or 5 units. If you build more than that, you're going to have an inclusionary requirement, meaning 15% of the units or so might have to be sold or set aside to these lower income category households. For sale units are restricted most commonly for 45 years. So you buy the house if it's a for sale project, and it must remain affordable or to that low income category of a buyer, unless you buy out of that those provisions. And most of the cities that I saw, they have buyout provisions for homeowners who may originally have started out as a low income buyer, but then graduated to they're now a higher income, and they want to sell the property in order to get the equity out of the property or appreciation of the property. And you can't do that if the property is restricted to low income, because it actually artificially sets a lower than market rate price. For rent units, usually 55 years or forever, units under inclusionary programs remain to lower income households, which is pretty common in all of those cities that I looked at. Next slide. And like I mentioned earlier, there are alternatives in all of these programs to providing the inclusionary units on the project, either through land dedication or paying a fee. Next slide. I called the program managers or department directors on the 4 cities to find out what the status of their program, how it worked, didn't work. And this sort of briefly just summarizes what they said. Pasadena really likes their program. It's been adopted since 2001. It's produced 590 affordable units. In fact, it's been so successful in 2019, they increased the inclusionary requirement from 15 to 20% of units within a project. And I'll note, Pasadena is a different kind of housing market than Glendora or some of the other cities I'm going to be talking about. So it's, more urban. It's got a much more robust market in general than we do. So they're probably a little bit of an outlier. Duarte, the community development director, indicated that the program had been suspended since 2016 because they determined that it was a deterrent to housing development. And so they stopped the program at that time. Next slide. The city of Claremont has also has a program and has been in place for quite a while. They've only produced units that are for sale units. They've not produced any for rent units, about 50 affordable units in the past decade. No low-income units have been produced, and the director there indicated that the council is asking them to reevaluate the program in some manner to really try to, or do something, maybe it's not inclusionary housing, might be something different, to increase the number of units for low-income households that are developed within their community. Pomona, like I said, they recently adopted the program on May 3rd Too soon to assess the impact, but its parameters are very similar to the other cities that I found. Next slide. So just briefly over some of the legal issues and court cases that have come relative to inclusionary housing programs over the last decade. About 10 years ago, inclusionary programs, which have been around for quite a while, several decades, or maybe it's probably been at least 30 years that inclusionary programs have been around, if not more. But in the last decade, there were a couple of cases that directly went after inclusionary programs, and actually, rather than go into the details here, that were a setback to inclusionary programs. And then for a period of years, from about 2012 to 17, made it so inclusionary programs for rent projects were not able to be constructed during that period, particularly because of the Palmer case, where the court determined that the Costa-Hawkins Rent Control Act, which allows units under rent control to be set to market rate when a unit is vacant. The court said, hey, if you can set a vacant unit to market rate, you can't impose that same requirement on under an inclusionary ordinance. And likewise, a similar law or a different kind of lawsuit brought by the California Building Industry Association against the city of San Jose actually triggered some of the requirements that are in inclusionary programs today, such that you do a feasibility study, make sure that the developer gets a reasonable return on their investment. Next slide. AB 1505 was the Palmer fix, and that was in 2017, where the legislature expressed their support for inclusionary programs in the state, and basically by legislation undid the limitations on inclusionary programs that were imposed under the Palmer decision in that City of Los Angeles project. Next slide. So I know that one of the things, especially with the council, is concerned, and all cities are concerned about in adopting, any additional requirements on developments. What does that do to the market? And it's particularly tricky when, cities or governments in general try to get involved in, directing the market in a particular direction or regulating the market in a particular way to produce a certain outcome. And in this case, it's affordable units. So I found a study from 2016, which was completed by the Urban Land Institute, which is a North American nonprofit that studies urban issues such as this, and that is also available for review on the references and resources I provided. It analyzed a variety of inclusionary programs and studies, primarily in the United States and Canada, in large cities, focusing on multifamily housing. But I wanted to talk about some of the key takeaways, because I think it reveals or shines light on some of the examples that I gave from other cities and on the outcomes. So next slide. Oh, going all the way to staff recommendations. So I guess I'm wrapping it up. But I'll just really briefly touch. So really on the outcomes, two of the things stuck out. One is that the study indicated that the single most important factor for an inclusionary zoning policy to achieve its goals is a significant sustained level of market rate development in the local market. And I think that's why one of the reasons Pasadena's has been successful. And it also found that in most cases, jurisdictions will need to provide development incentives to ensure the feasibility of development projects affected by inclusionary ordinances. And that sort of reflects back to some of these state density bonuses and concessions on development that I highlighted earlier in the presentation. And that concludes the findings in my research on the subject. And I turn it over to the council to have your study session.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate all that information. So I will bring it back to the council. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I'll be brief, because I know that a colleague of mine has a lot to express, which I want to hear and I respect. The reason that I wanted to engage on this is simply to study it which is what Jeff is allowing us to do. There's not a meeting that seems to go by that we don't talk about what the state is saying that we should do in terms of, giving folks a chance to buy a home, to rent, to build more, just housing. And at some point, I thought it was a good idea to at least consider this because everybody needs a start. Everybody needs a hand up. And certainly we've all been there when we bought our first home. And if it wasn't for family, friends, or something else, we probably couldn't have got that. And so I do think that, we need to look at this. I was listening to a business show today. Gary knows much more about this than I do, but I believe that there was a figure that I heard that through government fees and everything else, it adds about 93 grand to a home. I find that very hard. We know just in recent months that lumber has gone up, doubled in price. So how are people among us going to get a start and get a chance? And I think that this is one way that at least we should think about. And so I'm thankful that the council is taking time to talk about this, to study this, and let's see just where it goes. So, Madam Mayor, thank you for initiating this, and I hope that we can have a good chat about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedendall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Jeff, for the very thorough report. The realities are challenging. Like Mendel just shared, somehow we all have to find our first TP and a place to call home. And how do we do that? It's not easy. I struggle, and I hear often that it's not inventory that's the difficulty as much as it is the affordability. And affordability is a strange term. Affordable is relative to the situation of the consumer. I have two big concerns. Well, I think doing an inclusionary opportunity or making affordable housing is super important to do. I have a difficult time with saying who's going to bear the burden of that. Is it the developer through additional costs? If they don't get to receive return on their investment, then will they want to continue to develop? If it gets passed on to the buyer, well, that just kills the affordability discussion. My other concern is through the credits and considerations, density increases and things, does that now attack the ability for local control over building zoning requirements and design elements? I have concerns for that. So I am open ears. I want to listen and learn, but I don't want to give up what our community sees as the best for Glendora and what we want the community to be continuing to be for the next 10, 20 years without dramatic change. And what's good in Pasadena and looks good in their civic center may not be the fit that works in Glendora, but somehow we need to figure out a way to make housing affordable for the builder and for the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Okay, well, put something like this on the agenda and limit my time is going to be difficult, but this is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I want to start by, we all are looking for the same solution. We need people to be able to put roofs over their heads that they can afford. People should not be spending 50% or more of their income to be housed. We're just not quite on the same page of how we want to get there. And so I want to share a few different ideas to support my opinion. But first I want to start, when we talk about inclusionary housing, I despise that term because it's anything but inclusionary, because the bottom line is there's an additional cost to a certain percentage of home buyers. And that additional cost, a portion of that money is then used to subsidize other housing. So there's nothing inclusionary about it. It is exclusionary, if it's anything, because it punishes a certain number of people in order to do for others. My opinion is anything that increases the cost of housing is bad for everyone, except for realtors and real estate investors. So we need to try to figure out what we can do to address this. But I want to talk about three things tonight. I want to talk about how housing values are achieved. And there's basically three factors that are used to come up with the value of homes. And you use what's called the income approach, which really doesn't affect what we're talking about here tonight, the replacement cost, and the comparable sales cost. And so I want to give some examples. If a builder comes into town and they're going to build some new 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot ranch style homes with a 2-car garage and sell them for $500,000, but because of some inclusionary zoning that we have in place, we have fees or we have other things that's going to increase the cost of that home to $510,000. What that does immediately is Bob, who lives down the street, calls a realtor and he wants to sell his house. And he has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot home that's built in the 1950s. It's a ranch style with a 2-car garage. And if we had not had this inclusionary clause in place, those new homes would be selling for $500,000. And Bob would be selling his used home for $500,000 because that's the cost to replace it. And that new home sale would also be used as a comparable to compare the value to his home. So we immediately have increased the value of homes in this particular neighborhood and in surrounding neighborhoods, and actually in the entire city and probably the county, by adding these additional costs onto certain homes. Home values are typically based on a price per square foot. So it doesn't matter if it's a larger home or a smaller home. In that particular scenario, we just increased the cost of that home from $333 per square foot to $340 a square foot. And it's going to make a difference in that home buyer's monthly payment of about $50 a month. And, as we talk about these things, I'm constantly hearing from legislators, but okay, well, this is only going to cost a few extra dollars a month. It's only going to be an extra $20 a month. It's only $75 a year. Well, every dollar counts, and especially when it comes to housing. And again, to share an argument to support the fact that $1 makes a difference, we deal with people all the time. And let's say you have somebody that can afford a house payment or a rent payment of $2,000 a month. We know for a fact they cannot afford $3,000 a month. But there's some number in between there that's going to put them over the edge. They can afford $2,000 a month. They can probably afford $2,001. They'll come up with that extra dollar, $2,010, maybe even $2,100. But there's a number somewhere between that $2,000 and $3,000 that's going to push those people from having a roof over their head to sleeping in a car at night. And we need to stop increasing that cost even by $1. The government has no business increasing the cost of housing by anything. The other thing that goes into place is every time these things happen, it's not just one new fee or one new regulation. There are 20, 30, 40 of these every single year that all add a little bit of an additional cost. And I do a long spiel on this that I give to a lot of different people, that in my study, I believe that the average cost of rent in the state of California has increased by $532 a month based on nothing more than additional government fees, taxes, and regulations since I've been sitting on the city council. $532 a month is additional housing costs per month for the average Californian. And renters are always the most affected when it comes to, the cost of housing. Most renters, they're there because they can't afford to buy a home yet. And we got to take a look at the cost of rent and any additional fees that we add on to housing. And again, to me, it's easy to use a scenario. And we know these numbers aren't real, but they're real easy for me to use in my head. But let's use a scenario where Michael just inherits $500,000 from a long lost uncle that he didn't know about. He decides he's going to buy a house here in town and he's going to use it as a rental property. He rents it out to Mendel for $2,000 a month, and Mendel pays all the expenses. He pays the maintenance, he pays all the utilities. So Michael has no expenses on this home. Money, we got a $2,000 a month rent coming in. If you take a look at that, and stop and think about that $2,000 a month rent. We've got a taxpayer who's renting that property, who's paid rent on or paid taxes on their income. And so now the landlord is required to pay federal income tax. And federal income tax on that income is going to be about $740 every month of that rent is just in federal income tax. State income tax is about $260 a month. California's state income tax is more than 30% higher than the second highest state income tax in the country. Look at property taxes. Property taxes on that property is going to be about $6,200 a year, about another $500 a month that a tenant is paying for property taxes. Those three taxes alone account for 75% of the rent that's being paid. We don't have a housing crisis. California has a taxing crisis. That's our problem. The majority of the money that's going into housing is because of government cost. I'll continue to stand by the quote that I use on a regular basis. We have to stop increasing the cost of housing in order to decrease the cost of housing. I appreciate Jeff's research on this, but there's a variety of different papers that talk about the negative effect that inclusionary zoning has on housing costs. There's an article, Denver has inclusionary housing ordinances in the city of Denver. And there's an article I was reading that this sums up everything that I just said very briefly. It says, first, developers respond to a higher cost of building by building fewer units. Second, to pay for the units that they have to sell or rent below market rates, they raise the prices of market rate units. Third, existing home sellers and landlords see that new units are going for higher prices and they raise their prices as well. That's exactly what this type of thing does. A ridiculous opinion? Sacramento could fix this with one stroke of the pen. You could make housing tax exempt. If there were no taxes on housing in the state of California, our housing costs would plummet. But that's not an option. That's not even anything that we're talking about. We continue to talk about adding more taxes on housing. And so until we get past this idea of taking $1 away from somebody and giving 50 cents to somebody else, we're going to continue to drive the cost of housing up. So that's my 2 bits worth. When we're done here, I'd like to throw a couple of ideas out there if we decide not to move forward with this. Because something does need to be done and there needs to be a first step somewhere. So thanks for bearing with me and I'm done.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. Yes, it is apparent that this is a passion of yours. Thank you. Councilmember Alawas.
Yes, to thank you, Mayor. To extend on that, if anyone thought that Gary wasn't passionate about something, he just kind of proved everybody wrong on that. And it was really hard to follow that with all my colleagues before because they've all were eloquent in what they were saying. The bottom line is that basically government is making housing more expensive. And yes, we want to do something to fix that so that folks can live where they want to live. Unfortunately, we always can't live where we want to live. We have to go and find out, find where the lower cost housing is. And then we try to move up as we get more successful in life. What's challenging is California is already the most expensive state to live in behind Hawaii. And that says quite a bit when we are on the mainland and we are pretty prosperous with our diversity. So how do we go from here? I think we all want to do something. And that's the big question. I think everyone's trying to figure that out. And to Gary's point and to Mendel's point, government needs to get out of the way. Just get out of the way. And that's the best solution that we can hope for. And I know that we've been doing that with our letters, writing and opposing certain legislation, but then the legislature comes back and says, well, if we don't force you to do something, you're not going to do anything. Well, my answer to that is if you get out of the way, the market forces will take over and they will correct the problem as they have in the past, supply and demand. As we're seeing right now, we have massive inflation coming in because there's just way too much money in the marketplace. And I can see that's going to continue to happen. So no matter what we do to try to fix this, you're going to have the price of housing go up regardless of what we do. And it seems like the push is to have bonus densities out there so that they can pack more in a smaller space. But to Gary's point is that someone's going to pay for it. Someone always pays for it and it gets pushed down. The developers aren't going to pay for it. They're just going to send it off to whoever ends up buying or renting moving forward. So quite honestly, I don't know what that answer is other than trying to get the legislature to back off. And I know that they're not. They have what, Gary, I think you mentioned somewhere around 200 bills that are up there right now that they're floating around on housing. And we're talking about one today. It was an AB 1401 that basically eliminates parking requirements within half a mile of public transportation. So we're going to be having to deal with that, more traffic on our streets. We're going to have to deal with our water shortage. How are we going to bring water to these new homes? That's a challenge as well. We have so many different challenges to deal with. Where do you start? You know, they say one bite at a time, but I think we're going to get indigestion before we get partial way through. So long story short is we need to work with Sacramento to back off a little bit, or if not even more, and start looking at what they do have in place, because they have more that they're putting in place right now, and we still haven't dealt with what they already put in place the years before. And so how do we go forward from here? I'm not quite sure. Maybe better minds than mine can figure this out, but I know that this needs to get addressed and fixed somehow, and I just don't know quite what direction that needs to take. The bottom line is this adds to taxes. It adds to the affordability issue, the more government gets involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the reason I originally asked for this to be on here as a study and discussion item is for that very reason that you've all just illustrated, that housing is expensive. We lack affordable housing. And for what I consider far too long, we've kicked the can down the road at trying to provide affordable housing, especially in the city of Glendora. And fixing the problem, there's not a silver bullet. It's a multi-pronged approach. And that's why I mentioned this as just one thing to look at in that bigger puzzle. And, you know, the unfortunate part is whether we have an inclusionary element or not, developers are going to sell their property at market rate. It would be nice to think that if we didn't have an inclusionary item, that, oh, they discounted by that much. They're going to sell at market rate no matter what, whether there's an inclusionary fee or not. At the end of the day, they're going to get their money out of that. So for me, one of the nice things about an inclusionary element is that it allows that affordable housing to be scattered, because my belief, contrary to what was shared a minute ago, isn't that, oh, if you can't afford to live here, then you go somewhere else. That I think everyone should have the opportunity to live someplace that they would like to call home. So the nice thing about the inclusionary element in those cities is it allows the affordable housing to be scattered around town rather than concentrated in one part of town and one development in town. It allows an opportunity for some of that scattered housing. And it also provides an opportunity to share it. In Pasadena, the city has used the inclusionary in lieu of funds as well as the projects to do 100% of their affordable housing. The city hasn't had to pay that they've been able to do it through that process and provide hundreds of units, and they've reduced their unhoused residents by more than 50%. Pasadena has the best, if not one of the best, in this part of the valley for addressing their unhoused residents and the ways that they've gone about approaching that. Yes, Glendora is not Pasadena, but we can learn from our neighbors. Claremont is looking at adding that other element to theirs because most of the housing that developers have built have been the moderate, and they're trying to include a way to increase the low income housing. But I think there's benefits to programs like this. We ourselves have done it a few times before any of you were on the council, that the council, prior to all of you being here, did it as a voluntary issue for Arboreta. And that is the money that we have used during the pandemic to house in motels many of our unhoused residents. So having that flexibility of those funds to do some of those important things. So I'm not saying this is a perfect approach, but it's one tool in the toolbox, and it gives an opportunity for us to design it in a way that it fits for Glendora, to add another way to increase our affordable units, to have those scattered about town, to have that cost shared through those developments rather than us trying to find ways to take that out of city resources. And it also, in Pasadena, one of the things they've done is try to approach having that higher density near the transit stations, because for a while, what was happening was the expensive housing would be near transit, and those people didn't need the transit. It was people who needed more affordable housing who needed to be near transit. So some of the new projects that have that affordable housing piece to it near transit, the higher density near transit, as well as that affordable piece, has provided the right housing for the right people in the right place. So those are some of the reasons that I asked for this to be a discussion item, for us to look at another option and another way to address meeting the needs of our residents who need more affordable housing, who need housing, for our workforce housing, a wide variety, because we need to look at this housing problem that Gary described very well as a crisis, but we need to look at it through as many lenses as we can, because there's not one fix that's going to get us out of this problem that has taken decades for us to get into. So it's on the agenda tonight for us to decide if we want to do any further action, or it's just receive and file. So I turn it back over to all of you for any additional comments.
Well, first off, Karen, to touch on one comment you made, builders set market price. They don't sell homes at market price, mostly because they base it off of their costs. And the fact that we have added on so much to the cost, the replacement value is basically what is used to set prices in most cases. But even if, let's say, we were able to reduce things and the builders ended up being able to make a lot more money, what would happen in California would be that we would have builders scrambling to come to California to build new homes, which would increase the supply of homes. So the idea of reducing the cost to build homes, reducing the cost of housing, I think, is the way to go. We've been pouring gas on this fire, as you said, for a long time. And the solution is not to pour more gas on the fire. My grandpa used to always say, the best way to get out of a hole is the first step is you got to stop digging. So I would like to suggest that I would like to ask staff to look at some few ideas that we might be able to do locally that could actually physically reduce the cost of housing to somebody. And just a couple of ideas that have come to mind for me, and I don't know the legalities of this, I don't know how we would do it, or even if we can do it, but I look at rents and I think to myself, every landlord in the city of Glendora is required to have a business license. What if we were to have some sort of a program that if a landlord does not increase rent from 1 year to the next, we have the ability to waive the cost of a business license or discount the cost of a business license? What if we invited developers to come into town, and we have development fees? We have a number of different fees that we have enacted locally, as you've talked about, Karen, past city councils have. What if there's an opportunity for us, if somebody wants to come into town and build homes that would sell for less than the median price of homes in Glendora, or even if it were 10% or 20% less than the median price, do we have the ability to waive some of those development fees and give them an incentive to come in here and build homes that would sell for a little bit less, or rental properties that would sell for a little bit less, so that we could help save people money? There are things that the government can do to incentivize people to do the right thing. And I would like to request that we direct staff to take a look at some of these ideas and maybe come back to us. And a business license savings is going to be minuscule. Our business licenses are not very expensive, but I will tell you, in a neighboring city, I own a rental property that the rent on this property, it's a small property, the rent's $1,500 a month. My business license is $320 a year. So on a $1,500 a month rent, my tenants are paying $30 a month just for a business license. But maybe we could do something that would start filling that hole back in. Maybe it's only a teaspoon at a time, but at least we've stopped digging the hole. So I don't know if there's any appetite to try to look to see if there's anything locally we can do, even if it's a little, but I think that there's a possibility that we can find something like that.
I know
Mary,
you're
I'd be
trying to find.
supportive of that.
Go ahead. What?
I would be in support of looking at those options and those measures, reduce the cost of government.
I was going to tease you, Mr. Boyer, and say that you were looking at a creative way to say rent control. That I know those are bad words in some people's circles. So, but I like it.
There's a difference between forced rent control and voluntary rent control.
Yes.
The unfortunate thing about rent control is that it actually increases the cost of rent.
So just want to do a little bit of expectation setting here, and appreciate the challenge for staff to come back if that's the direction that we go in and provide some of these. I'm sure Bill will be incredibly, he'll have his work cut out for him as we look at Prop 26 and fees, because essentially
Grateful is the word.
Yeah, essentially in the state of California, if you discount one and not everything, it's considered a discrimination against other businesses, and that amount of money would have to come from the general fund. Essentially, we'd have to subsidize those areas. However, that said, willing to work with Jeff and Allison and try to figure out alternatives, but essentially the conversation becomes one of the same. Either you take the money from one place or take it from another, but we do not have the ability to just waive fees for one specific area.
Adam, if I could ask a question with that,
Yeah.
Why would it be okay for us to only tax certain home buyers and not others?
Sure.
Which is what we'd be doing with an inclusionary in lieu of fee.
So fees and taxes have a long lore in both Proposition 218 and 26 in the state of California. So dating back to 1996, and then in 2006, I believe, or 2007, when you have Prop 26, you have fees have a respective use. So you have mitigation fees for roads, for example. So fees specifically for road use or the fair share would go into that road. For example, a business license is a tax and therefore set by vote. And so there's another agency I was in, the city council wanted to move in a direction for age restricted housing and give a cost reduction for age restricted housing. The city council then had to use reserves in the general fund to pay for those fees associated with that specific project. Essentially, you're providing an incentive in one area and not in others. So not that it's infeasible, we would just have to find an alternative funding source. So taxes can be used for anything where fees have to have a nexus.
Okay, so in other words, the government restricts us from being able to do some of these things that could actually benefit homeowners.
I would say the courts restrict you from doing some of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's still, if the council wishes, we'd still be happy to come back with an analysis.
Absolutely. We need to put our thinking caps on.
People a lot smarter than me need to come up with these ideas. So I just throw it out there and you guys can figure it out.
Well, I'm sure the developers will tell you if you can find a way to streamline CEQA, there'd be a lot of money cut out as we move forward with building of housing.
Definitely.
And
Well,
I think, oh, go ahead.
Well, what I was just going to say is I would support us exploring that, but I would also want to continue to support maybe a reduced sort of monetary fee that builders could pay, because I think Karen made an excellent point that if we could build a kitty of $1 million, say, through what Gary's saying, maybe sort of a reduced cash fees. Think about what we could do to help folks get into their first house, get into their first rental, by being able to subsidize that, just like we did with the rental grants that we made. We were able to keep people in their homes during some very hard times, and who knows where that's going to go. But I would like to just have staff look at the very best of some of what Jeff has shared, incorporate that with what Gary has said, and anything else that they may find that other friends of ours or cities of ours or possibly doing. I mean, I just think that we really need to look at this, because this is a problem that we need to solve, or at least we need to attempt to solve.
Well, Mendo, I believe that Gary was mentioning about reducing the fees, which reduces our coffers, not necessarily building a coffer, making it attractive for builders to come to the city and make it less expensive for them, because we all know that if it's more expensive, they're just going to pass it on and pass it through.
And agreed. But if our fee was less than what Pasadena was going to charge, or any other city was going to charge, maybe that would help them too. So.
Absolutely.
Mr. Raymond?
I was only going to add that I think as Glendora's fees are pretty low in general, that we'll probably look at other things, like if the city owns land and uses that for a specific area. I think there can be a wide ranging topics here. And I think the premise of the Mayor Pro Tem's request is take a look at the gambit of what's out there, not just fees for an example, but land and other alternatives, to try to figure out if the overall arching goal, as I understand it, is to reduce the cost of housing. What are some potential options, both theoretical and practical, that we could do? Is that a fair assumption there?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we need to come up with some ideas without increasing the cost of housing to anyone.
And whatever idea we have, it has to be sustainable, not one shot.
How about multiple one shots in a sustainable program?
That's an
I think,
oxymoron.
I mean, honestly, it's, I wouldn't want to limit us just there because as the state of California has continued to prove, they keep changing the rules and how we do business. So this is one of those areas where I think we'd have to be really nimble. And as we come back, and I see Jeff's already turning off the lights, so he's trying to find really unique ways of saving money for us. Definitely up to the challenge. And I know Bill will be up to the challenge from a legal perspective when he tells us our options have hurdles that we need to overcome. But if that's the will of the council, we'd be happy to do that.
And since we're in budget season right now, I guess that will affect our projections outward.
No, sir. We'd wait till we had action of the council. I think at this point, there's a heavy dose of research that's needed, taking a look at where we find ourselves, and we would come back if the council wanted to move forward with any impacts in the budget.
Yeah, again, there is not a silver bullet. It takes many different ways to get at this problem because it's been a long time coming. So just continuing to be open to looking at it in as many ways as possible. So is that enough information for you, Mr. Raymond and Mr. Kugel, or do you need something more definitive from us?
No, I think our direction is clear. Figure out a way to do something other cities haven't been able to do as it relates to decreasing the overall cost of housing. So I think we have a pretty wide playing field here, and I know Bill will definitely help us with the legal boundaries.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, hopefully we can continue to be open to opportunities and possibilities to provide affordable housing as those opportunities are presented to us. So,
Mayor Davis, there is a motion on the floor with a second. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer and Alois, are you okay with the requested amendments to your original motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody opposed?
can you restate what that motion is?
Good luck.
No. Kathleen, can you help?
So I have a motion to look at ways, look the gamut, as Adam so nicely put it, on ways to reduce housing costs, some of which might be to waive business license if renters agree to either not increase rents year to year, waive development fees if developers agree to look at decreasing the cost of the housing, as well as look at different assets the city has relating to properties we currently have, and look at whether or not we could utilize them to also increase that housing cost.
If I could change this motion to make it relatively simple, I would like to instruct staff to come up with ideas to reduce the cost of housing without increasing the cost of housing to anyone else. Does that make sense?
Yes. Instruct direct staff to look at ways to reduce the cost of housing without increasing the cost of housing to anybody else. Councilmember Alois, are you okay with that?
I'm in agreement.
Okay, then I'm going to take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alois?
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you. That takes us to unfinished business. We have none. New business, item 13, introduction to redistricting following the release of 2020 census information, also part of Strategic Plan 26. And Ms. Kathleen, City Clerk Communications Director, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I'm going to provide a really brief introduction and then turn this presentation over to Jeff Simonetti, sorry, from NDC, which is the city's has contracted with for National Demographics Corporation, and they specialize in the redistricting. Every 10 years, any cities that utilize by district election systems must use the new census data to review and when warranted, redraw district lines to reflect how the properties within each district might have changed. This process ensures that all districts are nearly equal in population. The 2020 census has been a little bit interesting, to say the least, because of COVID. A lot of the steps that we need to take in order to prepare and redraw those district lines have been postponed due to COVID, and the census operations have been delayed. So what we're going to talk about tonight is just to provide you with a brief overview of really what redistricting does, changes to the deadline and how the city will be complying, preparing everybody for the upcoming public hearings that will occur, and then getting ready for the next couple of months as we prepare to present new maps for council consideration and action before December of 2021. So Jeff, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will let you start the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Davis and members of the council. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Simonetti. I'm with the National Demographics Corporation. I'm joined this evening by my colleague and president of National Demographics Corporation, Doug Johnson. And what we'd like to do, as Kathleen mentioned, is just to walk through some of the process that we're expecting related to the redistricting in 2021, walk through a couple of the timelines and some of the key projects, deadlines, and next steps. So as you know, prior to 2017, the city council was elected through an at-large process. The city transitioned from that at-large elections to by-district elections starting in 2020. In March 2020, the elections took place for districts 2, 3, and 5, and it's anticipated that the elections for districts 1 and 4 will be scheduled in 2022. The switch, as noted in the staff report, was prompted by a letter from Kevin Shankman of Shankman and Hughes, asserting that the city's at-large elections violated the California Voting Rights Act. And as you can see here, there have been multiple cities that have transitioned from at-large elections to district elections, or are planning to do it in this process. So since the start of this process, there have been approximately 216 school districts, 34 community college districts, 137 cities, 1 county board of supervisors, and 35 water and other special districts who have started this process. So this is a process that's happening all over the state and will continue to do so throughout the 2021 cycle. And the end goal of this process here is to add in the new census data and create a new set of maps that reflects the updated census data from the 2020 cycle. So if we can go to the next slide, as you can see, since you guys have started your redistricting process, in 2019, there was a new piece of legislation that was passed, which is called AB 849, that changes both the process for redistricting as well as some of the criteria that we'll get into on the next slide. So as a result of AB 849's passage, it requires a minimum of 4 public hearings to process the draft maps and to create those maps. And at least one of those hearings has to happen before draft maps are drawn. So as you'll see in our final slide, we're proposing June 8th for the first hearing that we'll be able to go through, identify some of the neighborhoods, and go through the communities of interest. Then we will, in the summer, we'll go through and we have an online public mapping tool that will allow the public to submit maps. It will be considered at that point. We'll have 2 final hearings on the draft maps, And then we will pass the map adoption at the 4th hearing. If we could go back to slide 5, which is the redistricting rules and goals, there are 3 main areas and sort of buckets that have to be considered when we're looking at redistricting. The first bucket really is the federal laws. So related to the Federal Voting Rights Act. So first of all, each district has to have relatively equal population. And there can be no districts that can be drawn with race as the primary determinant. Then, if you see in bucket 2 there, we have the California criteria for cities, and this is what I was mentioning in AB 849. So first rule for AB 849 and the California Voting Rights Act is complying with the federal, first of all, complying with your federal requirements. All districts have to be geographically contiguous. There's a new addition to an AB 849 related to you cannot divide neighborhoods and communities of interest. And communities of interest are defined as population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for the purposes of its effective and fair representation. Finally, the last 3 related to this are easily identifiable boundaries. There has to be compactness, meaning that nearby areas of population cannot be passed over in favor of more distant populations. And districts shall also not favor or discriminate against a political party. Finally, related to this, we should respect voters' choice when it comes to continuity in office. We were just talking about development, so we can take a look at what future potential population growth may be, as well as we want to minimize voters that are shifted to different election years. So the last 2 slides, if we can go to the next slide, will address some of the specific areas related to the estimated project timeline that we have for the city of Glendora. So as Kathleen mentioned in her introduction, we have some delays in the census data, and we are anticipating that we will not have full data sets from the Census Bureau until either late September or early October. Now, this is going to present a challenge in relation to your election cycle. As you know, Glendora normally holds their elections in March of even numbered years. And with the delay in the release of that census data, there would not be enough time between the census data is released and when the law requires cities in this election cycle to complete the redistricting process. Now, there is a bill that's moving through the Senate right now called Senate Bill 590 that would address this issue. Now, to be clear, this bill has not yet passed and is pending in the legislature to address this. However, if it does pass, it pertains to the city of Glendora and would extend any term of office that is set to expire in either March of April 22, which is your districts, and it would move it to the June of 2022 to coincide with the statewide primary. So if that bill passes, the elections would move to the June primary, which means, if we go to the final slide, that once we get the data, we have a pretty tight timeline to be able to finalize, adopt, and submit a map to the registrar. So our deadline on there, if you go to the bottom there, is December 15th. And so we are assuming that we will receive data in early October. So that would require the 2nd and 3rd hearings to be done during October. We have a proposed 4th hearing on November 9th, and we publish those revised maps. And then the final hearing for the council to adopt the district map will be done in late November. And like I said, has to have a deadline of December 15th to complete that. The first hearing that we're going to be having is on June 8th. And at some point in the summer, we're assuming we'll be able to get the data and have the mapping software that will be released to the public. So in between the first June 8th hearing, where, like I said, we'll be able to walk through, determine some of the communities that are interested in the neighborhoods. And when that data will be released, the full data will be released in October, there's an opportunity to conduct a public workshop and also to have the community to start beginning drawing those draft maps. We'll also be updating here. We have a project website that we are finalizing now, and we should be able to give you some more information on that on June 8th. And that concludes the presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much for all that information, and your timeline is very helpful in helping us to kind of put things in perspective there. So thank you. I will bring it back to the council for questions and comments. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. I've got several questions, obviously. How firm or confident are we with getting the first set of data in mid to late August? And then what's going to be the difference between the first set of data and the final set of data in October?
Yes, so in relation to the census, the first set of data we're estimating will come out, as you mentioned, in late August. The difference between what the data that comes out from the census and what the final data, as we're mentioning, will probably be ready for in October, is that California makes adjustments to the prisoner population. And so it's going to take some time for the state of California to make those changes and to get to the prisoner adjusted redistricting data. And that's what we're assuming will be ready by October 1st.
Well, thank you for that wonderful lead into the release of prisoners on page 194. Could you explain that a little bit further about what that means by prisoners and the release of them?
Yes, so so what it does is it sends the information back. So prisoners are counted within the prisons, but the adjusted data sends their address back to the most recent address that they have on file. So it adjusts that data from where they're counted to where they lived at the last point.
Yeah, and Jeff, this is Doug Johnson. I'll just add to that, just to avoid any confusion. The prisoners aren't being released. The data is being released. So that's the key thing there. The data is simply counting them at home instead of counting them at the prison.
So they count then as the overall population that has to be equally divided?
Yes.
Even though they're not living here?
Correct.
Okay. So we're having the gold line construction that's going through our city right now. And we didn't have that when we did our first district lines. We're going to have some flyovers that may change the makeup and nature of neighborhoods. How do we account and calculate that in, or do we?
So that is something that we can certainly discuss at the first hearing, and as well as the community workshops. And that's something that we can certainly get the public to weigh in on if they want to recognize neighborhoods or communities of interest. That could certainly be something that's discussed.
So is there any legislation or cases in the past that have had to address something like this? Because we're talking about flowers that are 30 feet up in the air, actually walls dividing neighborhoods that we didn't have before. So I don't know if there's any case history or any issues out there in the past that will address this.
Is that something that you're aware of, Doug?
Yeah, I'd say it's not a legal issue. As Jeff was saying, those are obviously becoming neighborhood boundaries and borders that are hard to cross between communities. So we would certainly want to look at those as possible borders of neighborhoods. It's not a legal concern, though.
Councilmember Alawas, we're currently in the process of pulling, I'm working with Public Works and the Community Development Department to pull maps and locations of neighborhoods that we think could be impacted by either current development, future development, or were original developments to begin with. So that information is being collected. We have not compiled it all yet or done any analysis with that yet.
Okay, last question is, I visited the drawglendora.org website, is there a reason why you have to have a username and password? And secondly, is when I went into it and I didn't put one in and I exit out and error it out.
So it's currently in draft form. We're finalizing that now. But once the website is finalized, it will be open to the public.
Okay, and I said that was the last question, but actually I do have another question. Let's assume that we have, all right, Mendel. I know the blue moon's coming up. Assuming that you get the final information and data in October, do you think that and the legislation passes to move to June, do you think it would make that we would be ready for the redistricting and elections in June?
So we have, as you can see on the last slide here, we have there's time to be able to get from the data, getting and adopting a final map. So we're confident in the ability to get what we need to get done in between now and the 15th of December.
Well, see, this is why I asked the question, because you have 6/30/2022, and that would be probably past an election.
I think those are the dates that we are open for election in the city. That's the election season.
Well, it's a deadline for adopting and submitting maps to the registrar.
So yes,
That's December 15th. Yeah.
yes, the December 15th, and that's for elections. And if you read the specifics of Senate Bill 590, it would be moving those time periods. The reason why you see the 1/1/22 to the 6/30/2022 is that it would apply to any elections that are within those timelines. So if you had a March or April timeline, 590 would move those elections to June. That's what that's referring to.
Right, but it says to deadline to adopt and submit. So we would have to do this well in advance of the election because they'd have to know what district they are in to vote for. So
Yeah.
It couldn't be 6/30. It would have to be well before that.
No, the deadline is December 15th of 2021, election minus 174. If you look under the description area where it says city deadlines to adopt and submit, the election in the parentheses are basically all the elections that are currently scheduled to happen between January 1st, 2022 and June 30th would all be bumped to that June election. So basically no elections will be will be able to occur during that January to June date.
Okay, so that's the election.
That,
Okay, I got it.
It's the election season,
yeah.
not the deadline.
Got it. Okay, just a little misleading where it says the deadline to adopt. So thank you for the clarification. That's it. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Thompson?
I'm good with this. I think the heavy lifting will be in the fall and winter as we look at the maps, but this is really reflective of what we did 2 or 3 years ago when we went through all this. And so I really appreciate your guidance. I appreciate the outline here. It sounds like that we're on track, assuming that the state can work out everything and the county can agree with what the state's doing. So, and those issues are out of our hands. So let's just continue to work hard on this and have our stuff kind of ready to go. So thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And we'll certainly keep monitoring SB 590 as it moves.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedendahl?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Jeff and Doug, for the presentation. I have an off-the-record unofficial question to ask you, or the answer can be, do you have any feel for or indication at this time as to whether the census will come back and give us need to make changes? Do we anticipate that changes will have to happen on the district?
We would assume so, yes.
Okay. And I know this isn't you, this is the state, but fortunately, I don't have experience in this category, but do prisoners have the right to vote? And if so, or do they really need to register and have an address as to where they hail from? Because I don't know, that seems like a curiosity.
Yeah, I'll take that one. A few do, most don't if they're in a state prison. But the idea is that there are lots of people who don't vote, children, people on work permits, that kind of stuff. So it's just a matter of, do they count towards the legislators' population for where they're from, or do they count towards the legislators' population for where the prison is? And that's the question they're wrestling with.
Well, I kind of vote on where I live, so I guess that would be my curiosity, but I know you're not the voice. So thank you for that answer.
They're all going to be registered at your house, David.
Yeah, just don't bring your peacocks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No comments or questions right now. I appreciate the update and report, and this will be fun.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Jeff and Doug. And with that, I will ask for a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Alowis, a second by Councilmember Thompson. Conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Alowis,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you again to all of you for that report. That takes us to item 14, authorize an agreement with Flock Group Incorporated for automated license plate readers, part of strategic plan item 47. And tonight to report on that, GPD Captain Matt Williams. Mr. Williams, take it away.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. On behalf of Chief Egan, I'm here to present on the automated license plate readers. Apologies beforehand if we get disconnected. I am presenting on at an offsite training location and trusting someone else's internet. So fingers crossed. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd start off with the definition of what an automated license plate reader, or an ALPR, is. They capture computer readable images of license plates that allow law enforcement agencies to compare plate numbers against those of stolen cars or cars driven by people suspected of being involved in criminal activities. Next slide, please. So with Flock cameras, I'm going to get into the details with Flock. They're stationary cameras, and they're infrastructure free, meaning that they're self-sufficient. They're powered by a solar panel, as depicted in the attached photo. They have a cell phone LTE connection built into the camera, and that data plan is included in the price of the camera. Flock hosts a 30-day cloud storage of all the data that they capture. And we can leverage other Flock cameras in other cities. And I'll go into this, other cities that have this. But what that means is that when every city installs a Flock camera, we get to search each other's data. So it creates a mesh system that leverages everybody else's camera, increasing our reach in investigations. So something unique with Flock is they have this fingerprint technology. What that means is they look at the car first and then capture the plate. So through their machine learning, through their program, they identify the type of car, the make, color, other unique characteristics. That could be a different color fender, stickers on a windshield or a rear window, and then they look at the plate. Making this a sole purchase, Flock is a sole manufacturer and developer of this camera and technology. Next slide, please. So what kind of results can we expect? Our neighbor at Azusa has had flock cameras for a month. And in that month, they recovered 16 stolen vehicles and recovered one felony vehicle that was involved in a murder. San Marino PD has had these for a year, and they've seen a 70% decrease in residential burglaries and a 19% decrease in Part 1 crimes. As a refresher, Part 1 crimes include murder, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Other cities that are in the process or recently signed an agreement with Flock include Covina, West Covina, Upland, San Dimas, Walnut, Ontario, Redlands, and Monterey Park. Next slide, please. So I want to get into the details again of what Flock does and doesn't do. Flock does not have facial recognition technology. It merely takes a photo. It's not a video camera. One plus that Flock has is that their cloud storage is CJIS compliant. It's important to us to have a secure cloud-based solution. It's the same level of security that as the police department we have to have as well. So how does Flock get the data? They have access to the National Crime Information Center database. And so when they grab that plate after they take that photo of that vehicle, they compare the plate to the database in NCIC for stolen or wanted vehicles. So where are we going to put them? We're still diving into the details, but that will be determined by the Detective Bureau and the Community Impact Team. We also want to ask our neighbors where they're putting their cameras so that we don't have cameras sitting across the street from each other, and we can be more purposeful where they're going to be located. Next slide, please. So I thought we'd do a couple scenarios just to bring home how this will work. So in this scenario, a Flock camera captures and analyzes a car that drives by using their machine learning. Flock compares the license plate against the NCIC hot list. If that vehicle is on that list via a web page, GPD personnel will be alerted and the dispatcher can broadcast the last known location, vehicle description, license plate, and the reason why it's on the hot list. Officers can respond to the area, arresting the occupants and therefore preventing criminal behavior in Glendora. This is an important key that I want to bring home. A lot of people who commit crimes in town are not residents of Glendora. They come in stolen vehicles or have warrants or other reasons that they're on the NCIC list. So if we can capture them, stop them from committing crimes in Glendora, then we're leveraging technology in an important crime prevention technique. Next slide, please. Another scenario. Dispatch is notified of a crime that just occurred and receives information that a vehicle is involved. After receiving the vehicle description, GPD personnel can search for the vehicle on the Flock system using their fingerprint technology by searching for the type of vehicle, color, and make. Again, not just searching our cameras, but every Flock camera. If that vehicle was captured by the Flock system, the license plate would have been captured and would identify the owner of the vehicle, giving us a lead to follow up on. Next slide, please. So for your discussion, consider entering a 2-year agreement with Flock Group for the use of 30 automated license plate readers and authorize the Administrative Services Director to make the necessary budget adjustments to appropriate $82,500 for fiscal year 2020-2021 from the Asset Forfeiture Fund. And I'm available for questions. Also available for questions is Jesse Mund, who is with Flock. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain, and thank you very much for those examples. I think that's very helpful in putting it in perspective. Appreciate that. Okay, Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yeah, thank you, Captain Williams. Great report. Curiosity I would have if a camera, let's say we got an eastbound car, but the west end of town picks it up and identifies and flags it. Sounds like the system would track it. Say it was continuing east on Route 66 and we had cameras along there. It would track its last known position to help help the team narrow in on it. Does that sound right?
Yes, council member. So if it hits each camera, it would update its location as it goes through our system. Correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm in favor. Thank you. I think it's a great program.
Councilmember Thompson?
I think it's great. The only thing that Matt, that I would ask you is so it captures the picture of the entire car or truck or whatever. And does it capture the license plate both in front and in back?
It would depend on where the camera's facing.
Okay.
And where the car would intersect with the camera.
Okay. And does it capture the cycles and scooters and all these like smaller type of things, or does it just capture cars and trucks?
No, it does track people, bicycles, other objects as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think it's great. So thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Councilmember Alawas?
Thank you, Mayor. I applaud this agreement. This will definitely give our PD vital tools in embedding this. And as Adam can attest, I've been pushing for this since I've been on council. This is one item we can take off the list, right, Adam? But thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you very much for your report.
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
No questions or comments. Nice report, Matt. I'm very much in favor of this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Very good. Then I would request a motion.
Also
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Kathleen, are you muted?
Darn it, does that mean I have to start all over again?
That goes
Yes.
on your permanent record, Kathleen.
Well,
I was trying to decide if it was just me that couldn't hear you or if there
I
was
put her
everyone.
to sleep.
that motion includes both of the staff recommendations, right?
Yes, and we have a motion by Councilmember Friedenthal, second by Councilmember Alowis. I'll conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Alowis,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedenthal,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Williams.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Night. Okay, that takes us to member and staff items. Any council members have any closing comments?
Yes, I'd just like to wish everybody a happy and safe long weekend.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Karen, if I may, during the public comment period, we had a Melody Bennett that was trying to get on to speak, and there were some technical difficulties. And she had reached out to me, sent me a text, and I told her that I would just share that they actually had a group of people in their neighborhood that was concerned about the parking in the alley discussion that we had at the last meeting, and want to encourage us to take another look at that. But I did let her know that I would make sure and share that with the rest of the council. And I'm sure at our next meeting, they will be on and everything will work properly.
So
Thank you, but that's all.
So that means you want to second my motion?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Boyer, and we apologize for their technical difficulties and encourage them that they can sign on next meeting. And in the meanwhile, if they want to send an email, that would be great too, if they want to submit something in writing as well. But thank you for relaying that. Any other council members before I go to staff? Okay, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you very much. In a similar vein, we also reached out to her, sent her an email, included our public comment, and said if there's anything you'd like to add to the record. We saw there a connection issue and encouraged her to send in a response as well. Just really quickly, didn't have a chance to unmute on item 10. Thank you to Councilman Elowis for helping us with contact with the Chrysler Dodge vehicle purchase, and for the group as an update. We expect to receive the vehicles within a few weeks, unless it's a utility truck, which isn't the case here, and those usually take longer to be fully outfitted. And with that, that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Winder, anything from you?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Any other department heads that had anything else they wanted to share? Okay, well, with that, tonight we will adjourn our meeting in memory of Keith Hilliard, and we are adjourned at 9:34 p.m. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.